Okay, now when we look at, let's say there is a crash of the dollar coming, or a resetting of the dollar, it could be, there's always a reason for everything, and this could be an actual reset of American society and culture itself. That is, the American dream are over. They have been for a long time. Now, it's a little known fact this, there has been a kind of an agenda shared with other leaders, you know, going on for many years, let's say countries. I believe there's over about 130, maybe 140 in this group, and it's something that, you know, like you know, the American powers that be and the European powers that be don't know, but it has been talked about for a long time by other countries, Asia, etc. That America really does need to be brought into line with everyone else, because it is the biggest consumer for the least people. I mean, let's have a look at the facts and see where these people are coming from. And this is the American culture, my friends, but that is it. United States, they only make up 5% of the world's population, which is tiny, yet they consume 24% of the world's energy. I'll run that by again. 5% of people in the world consume nearly a quarter of the world's energy. And when they're doing that, they're using other people's up, like these countries below. 2 Japanese, 6 Mexicans, 13 Chinese. But when you go to the poorer countries, 370 Ethiopians, that's 1 American, uses that kind of energy, you know. These are kind of like trivia, but they're trivia facts that we have to have a look at, okay. Now, again, as well, is 40% of births unintended. I mean, come on, you know, this is America, this is 21st century. Never heard of birth control? Put something on the end of it, for Christ's sake. Because the population is projected to increase by another 130 million people by 2050. That is the equivalent of adding on another 4 states the size of California, which I think California is one of the most densely populated. So you imagine that, it's like having another 4 Californians. They're going to be, it's not just about, you know, plundering other countries and taking their stuff off them. It's like eating itself, you know. America's imploding in itself. It's consuming, and it's literally running out. It can't sustain its own consumerism. It's eating itself from the inside. Okay. Again, look at this. This is eating for the sake of eating. 815 billion calories of food a day. That's roughly 200 billion calories a day, more than's needed. That is a lot, and that, by the way, is enough to feed on 80 million people. You know, that could be feeding 80 million starving people right now. And in a day, every day, they throw out 200 tons of edible food daily. Now, I know this is a bit extreme, but the rest of us here in the UK, Europe, Australia, Canada, we are consumers, we're wasters as well. You know, but we are being brought into line. What we throw away is going down because we can't afford to do it anymore, because of all these cuts going on, austerity measures. People are really having to watch. I know a lot of women now are learning how to buy offal like liver and cheap cuts of meat and things like that. They have to, because they can't go and do the steaks and, you know, all the real prime beef stuff anymore. Okay, so, you know, you can say 200 tons for America, and the rest of us, 2, 4, 6, you're going on to like 1 million tons there that we're throwing away daily, that could be feeding what, you know, 4 times that number, 80 million people starving. We could be wiping starvation off the planet, but we don't, we keep throwing it away. So we're being reset in Europe and UK, and maybe it's time, because Americans are still just, you know, throwing food away, still paying like peanuts for their petrol, you know, the gas, what they call gas, what they pay a gallon, it costs us for 1 litre, that's 2 pints. So that really has to stop as well, because that has to be brought down, or they've got to find another sustenance of it. You can't just keep going into other countries stealing their oil, because when that's all took up, maybe then they'll start coming to invading their allies, you know, like England, Europe, places like that. This is what I mean. It all has to be kind of reset. And like I say, you can't blame the American people for that, because that is how they're brought up. That the condition, that is their culture. You know, it's a horn of plenty, America, and you know it has been. Everything's cheap, everything's throw away. Don't get it repaired, just go and buy a new one, toss it away. Again, you know, it's frightening. Now this one, forget all this, it's like trivia, but look at this. I predicted the water shortage in California quite a few years ago, and I said that it would sort of get worse. But to be quite honest with you, I thought it would have been over by now. I thought they would have built maybe salination plants like they do in the Middle East, you know, where you can turn seawater into drinking water. But no, they haven't. So the average daily consumption, American, is 159 gallons compared to 25 gallons with half the world's population. Look at that. 159 gallons, well, more than half the world's population has to make do with 25 gallons. And they've got California, which is going to get worse. I don't know how much they've told the Americans yet, because it is one of the biggest media-controlled countries in the world. Although Americans think they're free, it's like a big prison without bars. And there is a shortage now. It's going to get really, really bad this year, and especially next year in California, because even the states that were supplying California with extra water are now beginning to struggle with their water supplies. And so obviously at some point they're going to have to start cutting Southern California off altogether. So it's going to get really, really bad there. And again, I think the kind of subliminally getting Californians used to that, because they just showed an aerial thing over here on TV of all the Hollywood mansions and the beautiful green lawns, and yet all the land around them is all barren and dry and brown and horrible, you know. Golf courses, all this water, these sprinklers are going to have to be turned off, because soon there's going to be, this summer especially, there's going to be a massive problem of people in California struggling. And remember, you know, we can go with food without weeks, folks, but the human body, you know, 3 days, that's all it takes before you start, your innards start eating itself and dehydrating. You can be dead after 3 days without water. You know, we can't do without it. You know, water is life on this planet. It's more precious than gold. And yet here we are, spurting it onto lawns and golf courses when, you know, people are struggling to get water. Okay? I won't go into this wetlands being destroyed. That's all progress, and that's what happens. You know, 80% of corn grown, livestock. They're not even mentioning here about the wheat that's used to turn into ethanol to put in your car. You know, like I said years ago, Americans fill up your tank and starve a child in Africa. I mean, there's a world food shortage, John. You know, and yet you get people like Bill Gates going around and saying, oh, you know, the population needs culling by 2/3. Yeah, you want to look at your own country first, Mr. Gates, and start doing something about that. And start, you know, what are you saying? Kill everybody else so Americans can keep wasting, you know, eating more food and wasting water. You know what I mean? He's crazy. And that Bill Gates, he better watch his back in the future, because I'll tell you, if there is a world uprising, awakening, he better watch his back, that one, because I don't think he'll live very long. And I'll tell you what, if I was doing the circuit and preaching about we need to reduce the population rapidly by 2/3, this guy's talking about culling. He's talking about human culling. If I did that, I'd be arrested and thrown in a mental high security prison with a damn straitjacket on. So how's this guy going around doing that? And he swans into Africa and builds a little well here, and you know what I mean, you know, builds a little crappy little hospital there, and walks around like a, you know, it's a guilt thing, but he walks around like he's some kind of god. Mr. Gates, get your own country you live in. Let's try regulating that before you start killing people in Africa and the Middle East, just so you can have all this stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. So again, there is another reason why the dollar might be crashing, to be reset in America. You know, resetting it into bringing it in line with everyone else, because there is a global food shortage, and it's being caused by the elite. But more preciously and more seriously is they starting hinting now that there's a global water shortage, which it doesn't gel. Over what is it? 3/4 of the planet's covered in water. We've got a water shortage. And like I said, you can build salination plants where you can turn seawater into drinking water. But no, they don't do it. Because we're in El Nino season now as well, according to them. I don't really think it's El Nino. I think there's something else going on with the sun. Because El Nino does not cause stronger earthquakes, and it doesn't cause volcanoes to erupt. Okay? But they've warned us that this season is going to be bad. And I can't say for sure, because El Nino, it can be every 2 years to every 7 years, but they just kind of round it and say, well, it's every 5 years more often than not. But suddenly this one's come early. I don't think it's 5 years since we have the El Nino, but that's what they're going to blame it on. And, I think there is something like about between 9 and 11 states now that are having to watch the water. So like I said, as it gets tighter, people cannot, they don't have any surplus water to give to other states like California and the others. So there's a big problem there. And this is what government should be sorting out, instead of concentrating on the Ukraine and Syria, the Middle East, Iraq and Libya, which everything's all kicking off again. So there you go, folks. That is another reason why the dollar, the dollar could be about to be brought aligned with other currencies. In other words, give it some fair competition, which it really has to be, because China's a larger economy now. It's pushed America to second place. Russia's got the biggest gold reserve. So all these countries, while these elites have been fighting and stealing off Middle Eastern countries, Russia have been signing contracts, and all these countries are now growing. They're the emerging economies, and we're going down. So again, Jade Helm, it goes, okay, they're going to rather crash the dollar, it's going to devalue. That means all the prices will go up, and Americans are not going to like paying $2 and something per litre like we do, and they've got guns, so there could be a lot of big civil unrest there. Food again is going to go like up, or you'll have to start rationing it or whatever, but they bring it into line. They've been doing that with us through austerity, but America's different because it is a massive consumer, and also there's about 80 million, 100 million people with guns there that are going to say, oh, you really think so? You know what I mean? And the government have to try and stay in control in some way. So it could be a resetting of America to bring it in line, because, like the rest of us, there are problems with food, and there is a looming problem with water because of this extreme freak weather that we're getting. Like I said, some places that get water now in a few years won't have water, and those that didn't have water will be getting floods, So this is like a big shift going on. It's a big earth change that's going on, and the powers that be know what's going on. I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to bring us all into line where they can establish some kind of order just in case everything kicks off. And start with America. If you can make an example with America, they can make an example of the rest of us. Because like I say, we don't have guns, but we do have storms and rocks and Molotov cocktails. But you know what I mean? There's another thing for you. America being brought into line with the rest of the world on its consumption habits.